Thank you. Welcome to this meeting of Babergh District Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor John Ward, Acting Leader of Babergh District Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers, that if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. Additionally, we'll be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I'll now move to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Alistair McCraw, Councillor Deborah Saw, Councillor David Busby and Councillor Jessie Carter.
Thank you. Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary, other registrable or non-registrable interest by members. Are there any interests to declare, members? No. Thank you. Item 3 is paper BCA 2341 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of February. So if I go through those, starting on page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, and finally page 10. Any questions or points on those minutes? Councillor Davis, Helen Davis.
It's just a minor point. Given there are 3 day Councillor Davises in a row here, sometimes it's not clear which Davis is being referred to in the minutes. Is it possible to add in an initial?
That would be...
Just for clarity?
I think that would be very helpful, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, we'll do that. Thank you. Right, moving on. Before we move on, what I want to say to you is, where are we? We've got to have a proposer and a seconder for the minutes, yes, sorry. Councillor Potter and Councillor Helen Davis.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 5 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Next, we've got item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
Item 5, questions by councillors.
None received, Chair.
And item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or Joint Audit and Standards Committees.
No matters referred, Chair.
Thank you. Next is item 7, forthcoming decisions list. Members of the Cabinet, do you have any comments on the forthcoming decisions list? Okay, thank you. Right, there's going to be a slight reordering of the agenda from now on, so it'll be slightly different to the agenda pack in modern.gov. I'm going to move item 11 to now. That's the CIL Expenditure Programme, and the update on the Regulator of Social Housing will be the last item on the agenda. So next we have item 11, which is paper BCA 2345, Community Infrastructure Levy, CIL Expenditure Programme for March 2024. And I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member for Planning to introduce the report. Councillor Sally Davis.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce the Community Infrastructure Levy Expenditure Programme for March 2024, otherwise known as CIL. CIL is money taken from developers in order to fund infrastructure in the areas around that development. More houses and more people need more facilities. There's no one way to organise how these funds are used nationally. In Babergh, we use the expenditure framework set up in 2018 and reviewed annually by a joint member advisory panel. Infrastructure providers and communities bid for CIL money through this framework. In addition to the infrastructure funding statement, these provide the criteria and processes for assessing each bid. So this report brings you 3 projects for CIL funding. More and better play equipment for a play area in Brantham, a CIL bid of £3,833, which is for noting only, as a delegated decision has been made already. More and better play equipment for a play area in Long Melford, a CIL bid of £97,437, and a CIL bid of £240,570 for toilets and accessible changing places facilities at the planned new cafe in Bellevue Park, Sudbury. You're asked to approve the grant of funds for the last 2 schemes. We also ask Cabinet to note and endorse the CIL Expenditure Programme set out at Appendix A, which includes a list of approved CIL bids from rounds 1 to 11, together with details of emerging CIL infrastructure bids. I'd like to thank Christine Thurlow, the officer who authored this report. She's a woman with an impressive grasp of her subject. These are extremely detailed and thorough documents, and I'm grateful for her hard work and depth of knowledge. Finally, it's really, really important that communities get the infrastructure they need when development takes place. The sports facilities, the village halls, the bus shelters, the footpaths and cycle lanes, and the rest. We must continue to encourage parishes to ask for money to get this infrastructure in place.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Helen Davis. Okay, members of the Cabinet, do you have any questions on the contents of this report? Councillor Derek Davis.
Yeah, just a query about both the Brantham and the Long Melford play areas in terms of who actually owns the land or if it's leased.
I'll defer to the officer on that if I can.
Christine.
So at Long Melford, the land is owned by the District Council, but there are negotiations which are taking place for a transfer of that land to the parish council, either in the form of a land ownership or it would be through a lease. But that would be something that any award for CIL would be subject to. So confident that this is something that we're moving forward with. We brought it subject to that land transference or lease taking place.
Christine, can I ask you, is there a date set on that or should there be a date? Should it be conditional? Sorry.
This is something that has been, I think, going on for a little while, but certainly, you know, there are moves afoot to complete this as soon as possible. And certainly, myself and my team, we have been working with our capital assets team, and we're conscious of the fact that they are talking to the parish council and others. So we're hoping that that will be completed reasonably quickly, but I'm sorry I can't give you a precise timescale for that, but we are moving forward.
a deadline date in terms for, especially if you like, if there's a bit of a blockage in the system somewhere down the line?
Well, as long as we put a deadline down that was reasonable and we could attain, that is something that I can go back with. But if we were talking about sometime next week, that might be a bit of a problem. So I think it's got to be a reasonable time scale, because the lease arrangements are between our capital assets team and the parish, and I know that there is much more movement going forward now. I'm just not 100% about when that will be completed.
Who's here? And what are her thoughts of this?
Well, yes, after questions, I'll be going to other members. Yeah. Any other questions? Councillor Helen Davis.
I think my question might be answered by Christine. How long are the leases conventionally, and what happens at the end of a lease?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch all of that.
How long are the leases that you're thinking about implementing, and what happens at the end of the lease?
So in the CIL Expenditure Framework, the leases are set at no shorter period than 25 years. That's because if you're putting in a reasonable level of investment, we need to make sure that the communities benefit from that investment for a substantial period or significant period, until such time as those leases run out, they can be negotiated. But that figure was something that was set by our joint member panel, and they felt that a 25-year lease was appropriate in all the circumstances. So that is what we work to.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? In which case I'll ask other members if they have questions, but also I'd like to invite Councillor Malvisi if she'd like to comment on the Long Melford scheme.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think Long Melford Parish Council would welcome a caveat on when the capital assets team reverts with a lease. It's been quite a long process to get to where we are now. And the one thing that concerns us all is that quotes don't last forever. So we don't want to be in the position of having been granted CIL and then the lease has not been forthcoming, say, in the next month. And the quotes that we've received for the play equipment and the work to be done are no longer valid. So I would ask Cabinet if they would consider maybe a month for the capital assets team to come forward with a lease, which then obviously has to be put in front of the parish council solicitors to ensure that we're signing something that's acceptable. So I think a month is not too unrealistic.
Tom, did you want to come back on that?
Yes, if I can come in. I think there's a danger that we're combining two separate processes. Yeah. So ultimately the decision for Cabinet today is whether to approve the CIL bid to Long Melford Parish Council, and an inherent part of that is whether Long Melford Parish Council receive a lease from the District Council. Now that second part is an entirely separate process and isn't part of the decision taking for Cabinet, but Cabinet today need to be assured that if they say yes to the money going to Long Melford Parish Council, that that money can be used, and in order for it to be used, Long Melford Parish Council will need a lease from the District Council of not less than 20 years in order to comply with the CIL 25 years in order to comply with the framework. I would be anxious about 1 month, because in terms of your decision taking today, what you would be making a decision on is that your CIL offer would be revoked after a particular period of time. You don't have a decision in front of you in terms of when the assets team need to sign up to a lease with Long Melford. So you're pulling slightly different levers to achieve the same outcome. Now, outside of Cabinet, of course, if councillors want that lease arrangement to progress more quickly, then that is a conversation to have with officers outside of Cabinet. Why isn't that lease being signed and such like? I fear that if you put too short a timetable on it, then the lease won't be agreed. That will be no fault of Long Melford Parish Council necessarily, although it may be. It may just be down to lawyers, it may be down to land registry searches, it may be down to all sorts of other things that sometimes get in the way of land transfers happening quickly and efficiently. But all you would end up doing as a Cabinet potentially is bringing the CIL decision back to yourselves to then extend the period of time that the parish council have to get a lease in place for the district council. So I kind of get the point that Cabinet have an opportunity to stimulate a bit of activity. If you perceive that the blockage there is with the parish council, then if you put a shorter time scale on them expending the funds, that might encourage them to act more quickly. The sense I'm picking up in the room is that you may perceive it's the district council that is not acting particularly quickly on that lease, and I think you should take that outside of Cabinet if you want to stimulate that to happen more quickly, and the Cabinet member for assets may want to have a conversation with that team and within their portfolio about making that lease arrangement happen more quickly. I'd be a bit wary about putting a guillotine on, because I fear it would just require you to come back to this meeting to agree the money to Long Melford Parish Council again. I can see the benefit in it, and normally what we would do when we provide an offer is to offer that for 12 months. So the offer will exist for a period of time, which would be the normal process is that they must spend their CIL money within 2 years, of being granted that. So that's the kind of backstop, I suppose, and they will need a lease in place, and then they will need to get the work done. You could reduce that 2-year period if you wanted to. That would act as an incentive to the parish council. The parish council might perceive that to be mildly frustrating if they believe they are waiting for the district council to enable them to move on.
Thank you, Tom. I have an assets and investments portfolio briefing tomorrow afternoon, so I will raise it then and pursue it outside of this meeting. Thanks.
Could I just add to Councillor Helen Davis's question regarding the lease? My understanding is there's 5-year break clauses, so obviously the terms were reviewed on a regular basis.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Marvisi. Any other questions from other members? Okay, back over to the Cabinet. Open it up for debate. Does anyone wish to comment on any of these applications? Councillor Derek Davis.
Yeah, not specifically for any particular one, but I totally endorse what Councillor Sally Davis has said about how important it is for villages and groups to make the best use of CIL. It's there. We have a lot of problems, as we know, a lot of opposition to development. So when it does come along and the developers pay what is due, then I think it's, we have a responsibility, and the team that Christine and her team does is absolutely fantastic, and we've been together since 2018 when it first came in, so we've seen the good work that CIL can do, but it needs that constant pushing a little bit for parishes to understand that that money is there, spend it for the benefit of your parish.
Thank you. Thanks. Does anyone else wish to contribute? From my point of view, these are two quite substantial applications for CIL, but both have great merit in their own right. The Long Melford one clearly is going to be a major project for what is a growing community, and I think is going to be excellent and a good use of CIL, and to demonstrate that new development brings in that CIL, which can then be spent on facilities like this for the community. The Bellevue one, well, we all know how long the saga of trying to do something positive in Bellevue has taken, and although this is a significant bid for CIL, it can be justified in terms of what's going to be developed there will be transformative for the park and will demonstrate to Sudbury that we are making progress with what is a very difficult site. So I think both of these applications for CIL should receive our full support. Does anyone else wish to say anything? If not, we'll go straight to the vote. We'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress, but members may need to scroll down on their app to find it. Thank you, Chair. That is 5 votes for. That's unanimous.
Right, okay, we're now moving back to item 8, paper BCA 2342, financial monitoring for... first, thank you, Christine. Thank you, Joe, for coming on. Thanks. Financial monitoring for quarter 3, 2023 to 24. And as the Cabinet Member for Finance, Assets and Investments, I will introduce this report. I'm pleased to introduce report BCA 2342 to Cabinet, the quarter 3 financial monitoring for this year, covering the revenue and capital financial performance for the period April to December 2023 for both the general fund and the housing revenue account. And this starts on page 11 of your agenda pack. It highlights the major year-end projected variances that are expected compared with the budget if current trends are maintained. The actual outturn at the end of the year will be higher or lower than the amounts currently predicted, depending on performance over the rest of the year. Appendix A contains the quarter 3 financial monitoring for the general fund. Page 16 contains the background, which briefly summarises the challenges and pressures we face. In the forecast position, you will see that the headline for quarter 3 is that we're now forecasting a year-end deficit of £417,000, which is £440,000 worse than the budget surplus of £22,000. But it is an improvement on the position reported at quarter 2. As usual, page 17 summarises the variances for the service costs, income and funding, and pages 18, 19, 20 show the detail of the variances for each service. Key points to note in comparison with quarter 2 are there is a large contribution to the improved position due to development management. We're seeing the impact of the statutory increases to planning fees and also 2 large solar farm applications and a much reduced cost of judicial reviews. MRP financing costs are now forecast to be lower than budget. Interest income from SIFCO is unfortunately now forecast to be below budget. A significant forecast increase in interest income, however, arising from the Council's short-term cash deposits is noted here. There has been a significant improvement in the cost of corporate resources. The actual cost of the pay and reward review was a saving against the provision we had made against it. Also, some employee costs will be capitalised as part of the finance system implementation and transformation programme. There has been increased costs for law and governance, and as well as land charges being reduced, we have an interim corporate manager in place until a new corporate manager is recruited. Therefore, that increases the costs. Additionally, there is an overspend against the mayor elections. We have now increased the annual movement to reserves to account for that spend in the future, and it will be reviewed annually. There are increased costs for public realm, largely due to employee costs. And overall, across the board, the pressure on the budget from employee costs still remains. Reserve movements are shown on page 21. The forecast deficit for the year will be funded from reserves, and this was factored into the reserves position in the 24 to 25 budget that the Council has just approved, although the amount is now less than the figure in the report we considered a couple of weeks ago. The capital programme is shown on pages 22 to 28. When approving the 24 to 25 budget last month, we did agree to a number of savings in the capital programme by delaying projects until the following year. We'll also be looking at other items to ensure that they reflect the new priorities in our plan for Babergh that the Council adopted in January. Moving on to the HRA, Appendix B contains the quarter 3 monitoring for the housing revenue account. And as always, the financial position should be reviewed in the context of the updated 30-year business plan, and this is currently being updated now. We're in the 4th of 5 years where we can increase rents by CPI plus 1%. At the moment, however, we're under pressure due to inflation, which peaked at 11.1% and only falling below the 70% rent increase cap in July last year. The Q3 headline is that there is a deficit of £1.218 million, which is £616,000 worse than the budget deficit, but it is an improvement of more than £300,000 on the Q2 position. Page 31 summarises the income and expenditure variances and the explanations for those variances. Two things I would like to highlight are the much reduced overspend for building services compared with Q2 and the increased interest payable due to recalculating charges. The capital programme, which you'll see on page 32, is showing an underspend of £8.7 million. This is a much larger underspend than was forecast at Q2, mainly due to having to move the horticulture and play equipment spend to the new financial year and the Section 106 new build site in Lavenham now expecting to complete later. Reserve movements are shown on page 33 and include the transfer required for the forecast budget deficit for the year. The Council's prudential indicators are attached as Appendix C on page 35. We've not breached any of the limits in Q3. And before opening up for questions and debate, I'd first like to remove the recommendations in Section 3 of the report that the General Fund projected overspend of £442,000, HRA projected overspend of £616,000, and compliance with the prudential indicators be noted. We have today with us, we've got Jenny Smithies, Sean Coulter and Alistair Bryant here, who can answer any questions you might have that I can't answer. So anyway, may I now have a seconder, please? Councillor Sally Davis. Members of the Cabinet, questions? Sally Davis.
At the last full council meeting, a member stated that we were borrowing too much money. It was a bold statement, and I just wanted, from what I'm reading, because we're within our prudential indicators, we can safely say we are not borrowing too much. Could you explain that in layman's language, you know, why we're not borrowing too much?
Yes, certainly. So each year, as part of the Council's Treasury Management strategy, the Council sets two limits in order to regulate the Council's borrowing. So the first limit is called the operational limit, and the second limit is called the authorised limit. The first limit, the operational limit, is that sets a guide for the amount of borrowing that the Council would expect to have as part of its sort of day-to-day, year-to-year operation. So this would be the borrowing that the Council has taken to fund its capital programme, plus a bit of headroom to allow for any short-term borrowing that the Council might need to fund an unexpected cash situation. That's the operational limit, and then the authorised limit. That's a second limit. That's a limit that the Council is required to set by statute. It's under the Local Government Act 2003. The authorised limit is the maximum level of borrowing that the Council is permitted to hold by statute. So if our actual borrowing was to exceed the authorised limit, the Council would be acting ultra vires. So the statement that we're not taking on too much borrowing is predicated on the fact that our actual borrowing is below both the authorised limit, which is the statutory limit, and the operational limit, the operational boundary, which is our sort of our rule of thumb level for the amount of borrowing that we would expect to have on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully that's a layman's explanation. Does that assist? Or
yes, it does. Thank you very much. So what we can say is that we're borrowing, but we've still got capacity, like you say, if there are unforeseen events. So there is no way that we can be described as being irresponsible in our borrowing at the moment. No, I can assure you that the Council isn't acting irresponsibly. The Council acts very clearly within
the parameters of the prudential framework, and in particular the two limits that I've described.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Alistair. I'm pleased you've been able to reassure us on that. And I apologise, I got your name wrong earlier, and I don't know why I did. My mind was wandering. Sorry about that. Any other questions? Councillor Helen Davis.
This might just reflect my lack of knowledge in this particular area, but on page 22, section 5, general fund capital, under point 3, you're saying the council continues to embark on new projects where it's difficult to accurately predict how payments will fall, which makes me feel slightly uncomfortable. So can you give me an example of one of these kinds of projects, and also explain what percentage of the projects that we have underway are, fall into this category, and how you control the risks around that?
I think, Councillor Davis, most of the projects that are here have been identified for some years, and with a number of them that they have been carried forward from one year to the next. The capital provision was agreed 2-3 years ago in the case of some of them. And we have, as I said, and as you'll know from the budget last couple of weeks ago, we have decided to reprofile some of those to push them further into the future in order to save on interest costs in the forthcoming year. But there are some projects here. We're not adding new ones on a regular basis, and they'll only come up once they get approved by Cabinet and Council. But there would be some here that I think we need to review and to look at and decide whether they are appropriate and do match our priorities in our new plan for the district. So in terms of anything specific, I don't know, Sean, is there anything there you could identify as perhaps being, or Alistair?
Yes, I mean, that comment, that would specifically be a reference to the capital loan to Babergh growth there. So this is where we've got a development scheme that the progress of which is contingent on a number of complicated factors which are outside of some of which are outside of the council's control. Therefore the advancing of the capital loan is contingent upon upon the progress of a capital scheme, housing development in this instance, which by its nature is a complex scheme to deliver.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Okay. If there are no other questions, Councillor Potter.
Like my colleague, Councillor Helen Davis, I may show not quite the 100% knowledge on this issue. With General Fund Capital Programme, I couldn't help but look at page 23. This is a fund that I've not come across till now, the Regan Fund HQ sites. You've got on the revised budget a blank sum here. The scheme has now been combined with the Housing Delivery Programme by Babergh Limited. Well, where will we find that in the Housing Delivery Programme, please, that Regan Fund? Because it's not showing here in the General Fund Capital Programme. I'm sure there's a perfectly rational reason for it, though.
The regeneration, there were two separate items in the capital programme. They've now been combined into that one item which relates specifically to Babergh growth, rather than having two separate items related to Babergh growth. And it's purely to the regeneration of the old site and the construction of the 49 dwellings on that site. They're open market dwellings and not part of the HRA.
Okay, all right, that confirms. Thank you.
If there are no further Cabinet questions, any other members present, any questions? Councillor Riley.
Councillor Riley, thank you. Mr Ward. Thank you very much. Yeah, just a very quick question, actually. It's a general question. Does the council take deposits or borrow from the towns and parishes? Or is it all our money, all our borrowings are from commercial lenders or from the government?
We don't take any deposits from, was it town and parish councils? Yeah, no, we don't take any borrowing, or we don't take any lending from towns and parish councils. Our borrowing is, our long-term borrowing is from the government via the Public Works Loan Board. Short-term borrowing would be from other Class 1 local authorities, so other district councils, other county councils, through the intra-local authority market. So was your question specifically around, was it parish council?
Well, I'm aware that some parishes and towns are quite stuffed out with money for very valid reasons that they think they need, and I'm not arguing with them, of keeping substantial reserves. And the reserves, some are earmarked and some are, just general reserves. And they sit there being idle, whereas, one wonders whether, we could accommodate them for the odd £100,000 or £50,000, and we have them on a call basis, uncall basis, anything,
Okay.
But it would effectively prevent us from paying the margin that we pay commercially, apart from the Public Works Loan Board, and it would in turn put income, modest as it is, into the parishes and towns.
Yeah, I mean, the mechanics of our borrowing is that if we need to borrow, we go through one of a number of brokers,
yeah,
whom we use. And I mean, in my experience, none of the parish councils are actually sort of engage with the brokers. So therefore, when we go to borrow money, I mean, there's no parish councils that are on the sort of that are offering money for lending.
Right. If we were to ask you for a broker reference, would you be able to give it? If, for example, Pinewood or Sproughton or Hadley or anyone had monies and wanted to engage commercially, could we do so through a broker? Or are the brokers that picky that they don't want to mess around with low life, small life?
I'm not certain, to be honest. I mean, I can't really speak for the brokerage firms. I mean, I know they do tend to deal in millions, and I mean, I can't say whether they have a minimum level under which it wouldn't be worth their interest from a commercial point of view.
So when you're next speaking to your brokers, could you ask whether they would be interested in taking monies from the towns and parishes, and if so, what the minimum tranche and period would be?
Yes, I can.
I think that's a way forward.
Yeah, I can certainly ask them that question. Yes,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Riley, for that diversion. It's not really a budgetary item, it's more one for the Joint Capital Investment and Treasury Management report.
Yeah,
However,
I just take my opportunities when they come, sir,
of
as
course,
you know.
of course. Right, do you have any other questions?
I'm finished, thank you.
Okay, right. Back to the Cabinet. Members of the Cabinet, opening up for debate now. Does anyone wish to comment on the Q3 position? Councillor Derek Davis.
Yeah, I've just got one comment really. It's on page 13, regards pin mill plan maintenance. I noticed that the money for Q3 hasn't been spent and that current investigation is still underway for enhancements. You'll know that pin mill is a really important part of Babergh's tourism area, and we need to make sure that those improvements and enhancements at the pin mill are done as soon as possible. They should have been done already. And I also hope that the money that the failed Pinmill Management CIC have got left over won't be sent to an Essex charity owned by one of their own directors, but will be used for the maintenance of the HARD and to enhance it as well. That's my comment. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, which page were you referring to?
Page 13.
Page 13.
Yeah, the planned maintenance enhancement. Pinmill planned maintenance.
Page 20. Yeah, okay, got you.
So I've got a different number.
Yes. No, I understand. Yes. I will ask Mark Ems if he has got a further update on that, but you will be aware, Councillor Davis, of the complexities of the situation down at Pinmill.
I do indeed.
Yes, I'll ask Mark if he's got an update on that.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah. It's not too much I can say at the moment, really, to be honest, but yes, councillors will be aware that it is a complex situation at Pinmill. We have got legal advice established for our next step to move things forward, and we have got a list of actions that we now want to progress completing, and part of that will be starting to remove, starting a process that could lead to the removal of illegally moored craft on the HARD, and going through that process there, which is not without risk and may take some time. And we are aware that we do have funds to upgrade the toilets there, which is one of the things, and we've been trying to engage in dialogue with Chelmsford Parish Council and looking to do that as well. But yeah, we feel the upgrades connected in part to clarifying the position on the HARD and removing the craft on the HARD that have caused some of the problems we're facing dealing with the toilets and other facilities there as well. But we are now looking to press on with that, and I'll be happy to talk to the councillor outside the meeting about our plans.
So I know we're not in questions, but do you have a time frame for that?
I think we're going to be progressing in a matter of weeks as opposed to months.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to say anything? It's what we have here at Q3. It's just a further update, and the general trends that we've been seeing throughout the year are still there, although the position is better for both General Fund and HRA for the reasons that I've articulated. But nonetheless, they're both still showing substantial deficits. So I don't think we can expect anything different when we come to the outturn in July. But we know, we've discussed at length, both in Cabinet and also now in Council, the budget pressures we're facing. And we fully understand those and the implications that they have going forward, and we know what we've got to do to address those in the medium term. But if there are no further comments on this, then I think we'll move to the vote. Remember, these are just items for noting.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 5 votes for, that's unanimous.
Thank you. Right. Moving on then, item 10, paper BCA 2344, the Q3 Performance Report. And I'll now introduce the report on behalf of the Cabinet Member for Customers' Digital Transformation and Improvement, because she's unable to be with us today. So I'm doing this in Councillor McCraw's absence. I'd first like to highlight some points from the first section dealing with achievements, which covers efforts in access communications, voice and satisfaction. Both live chat and the new website show positive and improved responses. 97% of customers at the customer access points had their inquiry resolved at the first point of contact. We are further developing our online forms, redesigning them with the aid of residents' perspective. This two-way approach is further reflected in outcome 2. Satisfaction levels must be a key here. Although 76% are satisfied or highly satisfied with our service on the telephones, the figure of 48% from tenants about whether we listed an act is far too low. And I hope Cabinet note the work being done in a housing management system to properly log and action tenant requests. That approach will be reflected elsewhere as we launch our new complaints and freedom of information systems in Q4. Turning to the direction of travel, I'm very pleased to see first a steady fall in phone waiting times and abandoned rates, followed by a sustained hold at these lower figures. I have hopes of further improvements shortly, moving ever closer to our target time of 1 minute 45 seconds. Even with all the information streams we provide through chatbots, automated calls, the website and social media, it would be very easy to overlook the work done by our call centre. Providing a human level of contact in 500 to 600 calls a day is a mammoth task and an essential part of our operations. I'd like to thank the entire call centre team, particularly as we approach in real time our busiest period of the year when council tax bills are issued. Moving on to the rest of the report, the performance indicators are available on pages 76 to 80, and also Cabinet will note that the final section of the report, our plans, which is on pages 82 to 86, is firstly somewhat shorter, and secondly now aligns to the three themes in the plan for Babergh recently agreed by this Cabinet. In forthcoming quarterly reports starting in Q4, you'll see an increasing level of the outputs from Pentana, our set of performance management tools. That data will be invaluable in monitoring and feeding back into these performance reports, and there will be a briefing for us on this soon. The full effect of it won't be seen until the 2024 to 25 Q1 report, which will provide full reporting against our new plan. Councillor McCraw will be happy to receive any questions by email, but I do have here officers of Sarah Wilcock and Joe Hobbs are here who'll be able to answer any immediate questions. And before I move on to questions, and I'd like to ask for a seconder, but also if any at some point, if any Cabinet members have any particular comments on their sections of the report, it would be quite helpful. So may I have a seconder, please? Councillor Daniel Potter. I do actually want to point out an error in the report. I don't know whether you've seen it, but on page 74, you'll see it says that the projected surplus in the general fund of £2.878 million. Don't get excited. That is a cut and paste, an unfortunate cut and paste from the Mid-Suffolk document. We do not have that surplus, as you will know very well. It's one of the unfortunate consequences of trying to maintain reports whilst still two councils. Any questions or any comments on your own sections of the report? Councillor Derek Davis.
I'll comment on economy in no particular order. But first of all, Fiona's not here today, but I just want to publicly thank her in this meeting for all the hard work she's done with the economy and regeneration team. She'll be sorely missed, and Essex are getting a good old Essex girl to boost them. In other terms, the whole team has done an outstanding job in really difficult circumstances. We've mentioned already Bellevue coming forward and the work that's been done on that, and that continues to progress well. Although we've had to hold back on Hadley a little bit, the units there, there's still some good work going on in terms of the Starbucks. And finally, just to round it off, I was telling Sally earlier, but if anyone hasn't seen it, Babergh and South Suffolk in particular have a fantastic view, and there was a really great bit of tourism adverts for Babergh when Bill Bailey's perfect pub walk. He walked from the Stale Valley through to Brantham and then on to Pinmill with Sir Trevor MacDonald, and it's a really fascinating hour, which I recommend to all our residents to have a look and shine on what a wonderful district that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, just to confirm, I have seen that, Councillor. It's very insightful.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything?
Yeah,
Councillor Sally Davis.
Councillor Saw, she's not here today, but she wanted me just to point out a few things about her communities and people and places portfolio. She points that over 26% of Babergh's residents are over 65, which is more than the national average. And we're helping Sudbury Sporting Memories and Abercroft Leisure put on regular Dementia Friends sessions open to all in Sudbury, but that we also support young people and their families. The locality team has been working with Councillors Saw and Jameson to explore transport options for children in receipt of free school meals who live in our villages to participate in HAF activities during the school holidays. The youth prescribing project at Holbrook Academy is working well. Many students are participating in drop-in centres and lunch clubs. Another development is over 26% of our residents are classed as physically inactive. So it's gratifying that the Feel Good initiative, which is running across Suffolk, has been set up to deal with weight management, smoking cessation, and becoming physically active. Residents can refer themselves via the website or be referred by their GPs. And she says that weight management is the most popular option, and residents can be referred to different providers for help. Also of note is the Living Well in Winter scheme was launched on the 13th of November. 20 submissions were received and they were all successful. They came from a variety of voluntary groups catering for children and families, young people and the older generation. Activities range from coffee mornings to film shows, lunches to social time and warm spaces. Nearly £30,000 was awarded and recipients will have to provide evaluation reports. And this funding was provided by Suffolk County Council. Officers attended the Suffolk Association of Local Councils to inform them of support and funding opportunities available to town and parish councils. 2 food support officers are now in place. They've been visiting food banks, community pantries and voluntary groups. And officers supported the Suffolk Climate Change Partnership by attending the Community Energy Networking event to provide information on grants and support to community organisations. So there's quite a lot going on within that portfolio.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Potter.
I would like to, on behalf of Councillor Jessie Carter, performance report for housing, Q3 performance report. At the forefront of our housing update is the urgent need to address repairs in our current housing inventory. We have already initiated efforts to address those issues by engaging with tenants to assess the state of their properties and identify necessary repairs. Furthermore, with the support of Cabinet in the allocation of funds, in addition to our application for the Decarbonisation Fund, we aim to enhance the condition of all our properties. Streamlining the survey process and communication with tenants is crucial in expediting these improvements, and we are on track to achieve our goals in a much shorter time frame than originally anticipated. In the agenda today, we will discuss KPI figures which are significantly improving even with active call-outs for damp and mould. The Q3 report indicates that just 62% of tenants surveyed express satisfaction with the maintenance of their residence. As mentioned before, efforts are underway to improve this figure promptly. In terms of housing individuals, there is a consistent need for council housing. We are collaborating with residents to guarantee they are housed appropriately. This may involve assisting them in transitioning to a suitable property, thereby opening up more housing stock, or partnering with them and the landlords to optimise utilisation of properties within the private sector.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Any other questions or comments from members of the Cabinet? If not, other members present, do any of you have any comments on the report? No. We will move into a debate if anyone has anything further they wish to say, or if not, we can go straight to the vote. Are you happy to go straight to the vote? Yep, we'll go straight to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 5 votes for, that's unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Item 12, paper BCA 2346, the refreshed carbon reduction management plan. Now I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member for Environment to introduce the report. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Chair. I shouldn't have closed my book, should I? Hold on 1 second.
That's okay.
Okay, so carbon reduction management plan. This is a refresh of the original plan that was produced on 2020's original carbon reduction management plan, declaring a climate emergency on July 2019. Today, we are asking Cabinet to approve this plan to move forward with the Council's ambition to become net zero by 2030. It became a prudent measure to refresh this plan under the new administration and its set of corporate priorities. Following the approval of this plan, as the portfolio holder of environment in consultation with the director, this will be developing a funding package in order to deliver on the priority actions for 24-25 as finalised by the Task and Finish group set up last year. The 22-23 greenhouse gas report has identified that to decarbonise heating in the built estate will require a capital investment in around £11 million. This will reduce the Council's own overall CO2 emissions by a further 45%. Whilst acknowledging that this figure is an estimate, more work will be required to better understand the future costs of decarbonising the Council's built estate. This report that you have before you today, therefore, prioritises the things that will be the greatest impact in achieving the goal of net zero. The refresh plan contains a comprehensive set of actions for those originally set back in 2020, but now it takes into account of the changing needs of the organisation as well as the local communities and businesses. Rather than focus on the Council's actions alone, the refresh also focuses sharply on the actions of our communities in linkage with how we as a Council can all affect change. The plan sets out for each year the priorities for delivery in 24-25. We focus on the two biggest carbon emitters, those being the leisure services that we have and the sheltered housing. There's some notable achievements in our journey to become net zero in 2030. The refresh plan will continue on the consolidation of these by identifying the next steps. Existing solar PV on the social housing estates continues to reduce on our Scope 2 emissions, whilst the ongoing assessment of our sheltered housing is very much required because it is the second biggest carbon emitter that we have. Any decarbonisation of our social housing must therefore be taken alongside any wider review of this accommodation, ensuring that both value for money and an effective reduction in carbon emissions is married in together. And so therefore, I commend this CRMP to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor. May I have a second, please? Councillor Helen Davis. Members of Cabinet, do you have any questions? I guess I've got one. The switching the waste fleet and public realm fleet to EV. Obviously, that's a desirable long-term goal, but how long roughly is it going to take before we are able to achieve that? And I know we've made huge gains by moving over to HVO in the interim, but in terms of actually moving on over to a fully EV fleet, do you have any idea of timescales, or does Mark
say? I think the right member for Public Realm is here today, Mark Ems.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Chair. Moving over to EV on the waste fleet is connected to the new depot and connected to charging infrastructure, although there may be an opportunity to make some inroads into that ahead of then. You'll be aware that under the government's simpler recycling change is that we're going to be required to collect food waste separately, and when we take on a new food waste fleet for 2026, which will be 7.5 tonne and 10 tonne vehicles, maybe an opportunity for some of those vehicles to be electric, and I'm sure we could accommodate a proportion of those vehicles as electric vehicles ahead of any depot being in place or not at the start of that period, really. And then the current work on electric vehicles is indicating that the overall lifetime costs are not dissimilar to diesel vehicles, so it will become a matter of borrowing and funding, because the upfront cost is about double the cost of a non-electric vehicle. So decisions to be made, and where opportunities present themselves also in public realm with smaller vehicles, we're looking to see if we can move in that direction as well.
Thank you. And presumably, though, if we've got to invest in new EV charging infrastructure, then doing that in our existing depots is probably not the wisest way forward. We really ought to wait until the new depot's in place and up and running. Or is that, what would your view be on that?
We certainly wouldn't want to start cutting up concrete in yards and running in cables into ductwork, and which would be the way if you were planning in advance, but actually there may be enough capacity to bring in a small proportion of vehicles and make sort of cost-effective modifications within the current power supplies that's available at the depots to actually start that process of moving in that direction.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, other members present, have you got any questions? Members of the Cabinet, back to debate then. Does anyone wish to say anything? Are you all happy with the contents of the updated plan? Good. Excellent. We'll move to the vote then.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 5 votes for, that's unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the last item, item 9, paper BCA 2343, which is an update on the Regulator of Social Housing referral and our current compliance position. And on behalf of the Cabinet Member for Housing, I would like to introduce this report. So I'm introducing report BCA 2343 to provide you with an important update on the Regulator of Social Housing referral and our current compliance position. This report aims to share insights from our recent meeting with the regulator and to present an overview of our compliance status. I recommend and propose that you carefully note the information presented here, as it is crucial for our journey towards full compliance with the regulator's requirements and ensure that all members and senior leaders stay informed and remain actively involved in this process. The regulator has expressed satisfaction with our ongoing efforts and future initiatives towards achieving full compliance. As you are aware, there are monthly meetings conducted to discuss topics such as compliance, damp and mould issues, and transformation. The meetings will persist until the regulator is assured of our restoration of compliance. The table in section 16 of the report shows our KPI figures as of the 2nd of February, and the most recent figures, which were as of the 25th of February, have also been circulated to you separately. As you can see, everything is heading in a positive direction, but as before, due to us actively seeking out, surveying and posing specific inquiries about damp and mould, this has led to a rise in their occurrence, as reported in these reports. So that concludes the introduction. I'm happy to propose this and would like to ask for a seconder, please. Councillor Potter, thank you. Right, we do have... Is Deborah on call if necessary? Yeah. Deborah Fenton is available for questions should she be needed. So, members of the Cabinet, do you have any questions? Councillor Derek Davis.
I appreciate this is not directly related to the regulatory aspect of this, but I would like assurance that the Armed Forces Covenant, of which we are signed up to, is being strictly adhered to in terms of all our housing requirements for ex-service personnel, current serving personnel and their families.
Okay. Deborah, are you able to respond to that, please?
I am able to confirm that as far as I am aware, we are working to that covenant. However, if you have any concerns, I would ask you to email me directly and I can look into that further.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, anyone? Other members present, any questions? Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. I was looking at page 39 of this report, and I'm mindful that a few weeks ago we received a view from the Section 151 officer about looking at the use of external contractors. And on page 39, 4.3, we have got a specialist to help carry out procurement, and a contract to support us in addressing damp issues, and then 2 separate recruitments. So my first question is, what did that cost? And my second question is, given the state of our finances in the council, at what point are we going to upskill our staff to prevent unnecessary subcontracting for expertise? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deborah.
Thank you. So I don't have the cost to hand, but would be happy to get those. So that's in answer to your first question. In answer to your second question, it's actually prudent for us as an organisation to appoint some contractors to deal with specialist work, and it actually works out to be more cost effective to do that, especially where there's peaks and troughs, like damp, for example. So I expect going forward with our damp and mould, we will continue to appoint specialists. There are other circumstances as well where we would appoint contractors, and that's particularly around high risk work, and that's to minimise the risk to the organisation.
Thank you, Deborah.
Any other questions from other members present? Back to the Cabinet for debate then. Does anyone wish to make any comment on the numbers here? Councillor Derek Davis.
Yeah, I want to praise Heather and her team. I've had a couple of instances in my particular ward where issues have crept up for a variety of reasons, and it appears there's a bit of a computer glitch and other things going on, but the team have dealt with it really well, and I think as well as throwing brickbats at teams, we should always praise them. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to do exactly that on behalf of the residents in my particular ward.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from anyone? I think as the report indicates, that there have been significant improvements in most of these areas, with now the majority of them showing that there aren't any overdue actions as of the 25th of February. The only real issue, as Jesse's report has indicated, is that because we're identifying more and more damp and mould inquiries, that those numbers are not reducing as fast as we would want, but we're at least learning where all the issues are, and we'll be able to get on top of them. But if there are no further comments from anyone, then we'll move to the vote then.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 5 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Right, well, it just leaves me to say thank you, members of the Cabinet, for your contributions today, and thank you to all the officers for turning up. I know you probably all weren't needed, but it's great that you're all here to be able to support in case. So only leaves me to say that the date and time of the next meeting is Monday the 8th of April at 11 a.m. Note that 11 a.m. it's a morning meeting, not an afternoon meeting. Thank you, everyone.